thanks very much for having me, Nick, and thank you, Venue, for not shutting us down before I've spoken. They'll never have us back, of course, but that's another matter. Okie dokie, so I'll not take up too much of your time before we get on to questions, but there's a few things I would like to say. First of all, let's ask this question. In your minds, what are the limits to free speech? In fact, let's take a show of hands. How many people think there should be some limit to free speech? How many thinks there should be no limit to free speech? Okay, so it's this classic example. If I shout out now, fire, and you all come rushing out and there's people dying in a crush, should there be no consequence to me shouting fire?
No, well, no, you shouldn't be consequences for other people's actions.
If you're going to have free speech, you have to accept the consequences of it.
Okay. There's a bomb on the plane. See, that's where I disagree. I think there are certain limits to free speech, but for me, the limits to free speech are all around threat to life, personal safety, and individual. I'm totally against individual targeted harassment, for instance. I think if you go around, calling somebody names all day long and targeting them, that's not a free speech issue. That's a harassment of an individual issue. And we have plenty of great laws, Public Order Act, for instance, that say you can't do that. And I'm not against that. In the same way, we'll come on to Section 127 of the Communications Act later on. But it's not a terrible act if you think about what it was designed to do back in, I think it was 2003. It was designed to stop blokes who've been divorced sending horrible dick pics or what have you to their ex-girlfriends, wives, lovers, etc. Okay, because sending a dick pic to your ex is likely to be seen by that ex as grossly offensive. In the same way that, if you're one of these weird individuals who likes watching ISIS videos and gets off on seeing people decapitated on YouTube, then sending an image of somebody being decapitated over and over again, I think Section 127 is quite good at saying, no, that crosses the line of communication into something which is criminal. So I'm not against any of that. Not against any of that. But my position is that for a limitation to be placed upon our speech, there has to be a very easily articulated reason for that. It's as simple as that. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm going to read out some statements, and I'm going to ask you whether or not you think these should trouble the police, whether they should be recorded as a non-crime hate incident, whether they should be recorded as a crime, whether they are acceptable, whether they're not acceptable. And I'm going to increase the level of, I'm going to be testing your limits on this one. Okay, so here's the first one. I'm glad that you're all here on time. Any problems with that one?
Slightly passive-aggressive, but other than
Well, it's just passive-aggressive. But it's also the statement that you would only say if you're a white supremacist. Because it's only white supremacists who are hung up on concepts of time and concepts of being on time. So if you think that's all right, well, there you go. You're a white supremacist. Obviously in the right place. What about this one? What about this one? Okay. It's not there should of, it's there should have.
I'm a bit of a Nazi with that, yes.
You are a bit of a Nazi with that? Yeah. Again, that's because obviously you like English grammar.
I'm a translator, I'm a linguist, that's what I do.
You're also a white supremacist. Absolutely. So that's another one. Okay. What about this one? The Milky Bar kid is strong and tough, and only the best is good enough. The creamiest milk, the whitest bar, the goodness that's in Milky Bar.
Racist, isn't it?
Racist, absolutely, isn't it? Clearly, absolutely racist as hell. Because what you're doing there is you are equating goodness with milk, and milk is white.
Yeah.
So there you go, racist. Racist. So, what about this? Oh, this is a good one.
What about Gollywog jam then, marmalade.
That's an interesting one. Let's save that one for the questions. Okay, what about this one then? Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik is far superior to Jay-Z's Ain't No Nigger featuring Foxy Brown.
Correct.
Is that acceptable for me to say that?
Yeah, you're allowed to say that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Is it though?
Who is Jay-Z?
Well, who is Jay-Z? Okay, well there you go. You show your white supremacy right there. Because Jay-Z is a global icon of the black community, and also my son, who thinks he's part of the black community. Well, there you go. Okay, what about this thing? Well, absolutely, because apparently Mozart is also a symbol of white supremacy. So there you go. Interesting fact for you. Chairman Mao, back in the day, was also dead against Mozart and Beethoven because he got there first. They were definitely symbols of our capitalistic empire system. So there you go. All right. What about this? What about me saying ain't no nigger? Should I have said ain't no N-word?
Well, it depends what perspective you're looking at, because if you're black, you're allowed to say that word.
Yeah.
But if you're white, you're not allowed to say that word.
Absolutely, not even in reported speech.
So it depends what part of the community.
I went to dinner a few months ago with a leading writer of the Times, and during our lunch, the lawyer that I was with told a story about how she was in London, and she ended up sort of helping somebody, and what happened was the guy, this woman was being chased down the street by a black guy. And the black guy eventually cornered the girl and cornered my friend. And my friend stood there and went, no, get off. And the guy said to her, it's just because you don't like niggers. And she related this to the journalist. And the journalist almost ended the lunch because he said, you cannot say that word. And she said, but I'm saying it in reported speech. Yeah. And he said, doesn't matter. You cannot say that word even in reported speech. If I said that word anywhere in the Times offices, even in reported speech, I would be instantly fired. Lawrence Fox recently at GB News, 2 or 3 people resigned because he used the N-word. See, I did it myself just then. In exactly the same way in a meeting where he said, so-and-so said blah, 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 and used the N-word, nigger. And I think 3 members of staff instantly walked out. Said, you cannot ever use that word. So I'm just asking you, what are the limits of free speech?
I bet they were white who walked out.
Yeah.
I actually don't know. What about this? My cat's a Methodist. Does anybody see any problem with that?
That's a good password.
My cat's a Methodist. Well, let me tell you this. The family law barrister, Sarah Phillimore, who is my partner in Faircop, has a non-crime hate incident recorded against her by, I think it's Worcestershire Police, because she posted, as a joke, I'm not quite sure what the conversation was, my cat's a Methodist. Somebody reported her to Worcestershire Police and said, Sarah Phillimore is equating Methodists with cats. Do you not realise cats wander around people's gardens pissing over the pot plants? This is basically saying that Methodists piss on people's pot plants. They must record it as a hate incident. And the crazy thing was, Worcestershire Police recorded it as a hate incident and refused to budge and remove it when Sarah got in touch.
Were they confused with Catholics?
That's how, so there we go. What about this? The definition of woman as adult human female.
Bigot.
No.
Bigot? Somebody shout bigot? Any more for bigots?
True.
You're a turf, so you think it's alright, don't you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely, you don't have no problem with that at all. What about this one then? Trans women are women.
No.
But should it be criminalised?
No.
Should the police take an interest in somebody who says that? No, I agree. Okay. Mary Poppins is practically perfect in every way.
Yes.
What? Yeah. Are you agreeing that she is, or are you saying that, or are you saying that should be criminalised?
Yes.
Okay. That's another one.
No,
Now here's an interesting one, bearing in mind that we are in Manchester tonight. We all hate lead scum.
Yes.
Do we? We all hate lead scum.
Yes.
Is that hate speech?
No.
Is it?
Yes, I'm a Leeds fan.
Yeah, you're a Leeds fan. Right, excellent. Okay. What about this? What about this one then? What about this one? We fought in France, we fought in Spain, we fought in the sun and we fought in the rain. We took the cop and Chelsea too, but what we like most is kicking the blue, kicking the blue, kicking the blue.
Yeah.
Is that hate speech?
No.
Yes or no? How many people think that is hate speech?
No.
How many people think it isn't hate speech?
Yes.
Yeah, okie dokie. Right, alright, so we're alright with kicking the blue. Okie dokie. What about what we like most is kicking the white? What about that? Would that be hate speech in your opinion?
No.
And I'm not talking about Leeds fans, I'm talking about white people.
No, it's someone's opinion.
Who's kicking it?
Huh? Okie dokie. There we go. Right, what about this then? Black Lives Matter.
No.
No?
All as Lawrence says, all lives matter.
Well, All Lives Matter is my next one. Is that a problem?
No.
What about White Lives Matter?
No problem.
No problem?
No.
Well, there you go. Alright.
All lives just matter.
Here's one. This is from Oprah Winfrey. The Holocaust was not about race.
Oh.
It wasn't.
It's Whoopi Goldberg.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Whoopi. No, it was Whoopi Gold. No, it was Whoopi.
Whoopi Goldberg.
What's Whoopi Goldberg?
Was it Whoopi?
Yeah.
Have I just? Was it Whoopi? Was it? Oh, I thought it was Oprah. Okay, it's Whoopi. All right. Okay. So the Holocaust was not about race. Should she be allowed to say that? Yeah. Okie dokie.
said it in Germany.
Yeah. All right. Okie dokie. All right then. What about this then? The Holocaust never happened.
That's someone's opinion. So if people
Is it?
should be well, it depends how you look at it.
Should it be criminalised?
No.
It is criminalised in Germany.
I say in Europe it is criminalised, and that's the point. In Europe, if you say the Holocaust never happened, if you are a Holocaust denier, then you have fallen foul absolutely of the law.
We're not in Europe.
What about
What is it? We're not in Europe. Ah, we're getting there. We're getting there. What about this?
It's ridiculous. What about the holiday?
You're a ginger-haired twat, and I'm going to make your life a misery.
I might have actually said that.
I said that. Right, so how many people think that should be criminalised?
No.
Okay, what about this then?
Yeah.
You're a ginger minged twat, and I'm going to make your life a misery.
Not said that. Well, no, because if you, that's
Let's ask feminists, the TERFs.
Feminist, that was a joke.
So.
I think, well, it's a threat, isn't it? So it's different. But criminalised, no.
Yeah. Does it matter? Yeah, okay. Is it a threat when you say you're a ginger-haired twat? Is there any difference between saying you're a ginger-haired twat and you're a ginger-minged twat?
No. The part about making your life a misery.
It's the making your life a misery. I agree with you. You and I agree entirely. You and I agree entirely. Okay, what about this one? This is a good one.
What do you mean by making your life a misery, though?
Well, I don't know. It just sounds threatening, doesn't it?
You've got to go to Old Trafford every 2 weeks.
It's not violent. It's not against the law, is it?
No, well, no, it's not. It's not. It depends if you carry it out, I suppose, doesn't it?
Depends if you're the boss or not.
What about this?
Prince Harry, it's alright.
What about this? You're a Muslim twat. Criminal or not criminal?
no.
None of it should be.
That's the point. Why does it carry more weight? Because you say you're a Muslim twat as opposed to you're a ginger twat or you've got a ginger minge twat.
Or a Christian twat.
Because ginger hair people accept it.
Right.
And Muslims don't.
No, but a lot of Muslims are ginger, by the way.
Oh, really? All right, you're from that weird sect of ginger Muslims. Right, okay.
You're writing that one down now. aren't you?
Yeah. I didn't know that. I didn't know that. But that's, in essence, that's the problem that we've got. And this is the problem, these are the problems that our police force have to deal with every day of their lives, in one division or another. Because every single one of those examples, every single one has been reported and recorded by the police as either a non-crime hate incident or a hate crime. Every single one. Can you imagine a world in which you go down the road singing, "I'm practically perfect in every way"? That makes you Mary Poppins adjacent, and that makes you clan adjacent. Can you imagine a world in which that is the case? But that, unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, is the world that we are in right now. And I have a fair degree of sympathy for the police, because they simply do not know what the law is, what the law isn't, what speech is acceptable, what speech is not acceptable. And as far as I can tell, that is a real problem. So what my organisation, Fair Cop, is asking the police to do, we've been campaigning now for just over 4 years, is this. We want the police to police without fear and without favour. We want a police force where they understand the law, and guidance is simply that. It's guidance. Guidance should be there to, how do I put out traffic cones? How do I deal with a road traffic accident? What is the protocol for collecting evidence in the case of a murder? That's what guidance is for. And what we have, since I think the College of Policing was set up in 2012, we have had a steady conflation between guidance and law, to the point that the police, individual police officers, do not know the difference. They cannot tell the difference between guidance and law. And that was no better illustrated than in the case of Darren Brady, my friend Darren Brady, who I was arrested with last summer because he posted a picture of the trans flag manipulated so that it looked a little bit like a swastika. And the police came down and told him that he had committed the crime of the Malicious Communications Act. Of course, there is no Malicious Communications Act, it's the Communications Act, but that's just another example of the police getting it wrong. As far as they were concerned, because somebody had been offended by the portrayal of the trans flag as a swastika, that elevated something from being offensive to an individual to being grossly offensive, to the point that it transgressed a law, and they were going to act upon that. Now, I don't personally think those police officers who arrested Darren and who arrested me were bad people. But I think they epitomise the problem with our police force, in that we have a police force that is being drip-fed absolute bullshit, that is being drip-fed this diet that waters down the law and elevates guidance and elevates the rights of individuals to decide when a person has or has not broken the law. It was interesting, when we were being arrested, we pointed out that Darren Brady was not the originator of the image of the trans flag as a swastika. That in actual fact, it had been published by the Daily Mail some weeks earlier, and we said to them, why don't you arrest all the staff of the Daily Mail? And their answer was, quite incredibly, we don't have the staff. We don't have the manpower. In other words, if we could have arrested all of the staff of the Daily Mail, we would have. The only reason we haven't done is because we haven't got the staff. That is worrying. Now, where is this coming from? Now, well, we know it's coming from certain lobby groups who have a vested interest, like Stonewall, like Mermaids. We know this, and the reason that we know this is because these organisations hide in the open. Back in 2019, when I set up Fair Cop, an awful lot of police officers got in touch, and quite naturally they didn't want to be associated with us openly, because it was more than their jobs were worth. So what they did was, they'd get hold of me and say, look, there's this document come out to say in the Met, it's called such and such, I can't send it to you, but if you FOI it and say you're aware that this document exists, they will then be duty bound to go, yes, it does exist, and give you a copy. So that way I get to see the documentation without compromising you, my friendly police officer. So I got some of these documents, particularly around the trans issue, etc. And we sat down together over a bacon bun, as you do, and we went through and I said, who's authored this? Who's authored this report? And he said, well, I recognise one name, it's the Chief Superintendent, and she's really, really sound. But this second author, this co-author, I've no idea who they are. Absolutely no idea. So what we did, quick Google search, and lo and behold, somebody from Stonewall. Somebody from Stonewall. So that's interesting. And these documents, they're maybe that sort of thick. And page 1, absolutely brilliant. It's all about Stephen Lawrence. It's all about operating without fear and favour. It's all about all great stuff that you couldn't argue with for the first 10 pages, 20 pages, 30 pages. All about how you can't be homophobic, blah, 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 blah. It's really good stuff. And then tucked in towards the end, a whole load of stuff about the trans issue and gender identity. And what's happened is this. It's a presentation of how Stonewall want the law to be, rather than a portrayal of how the law actually is. Now, these documents are so damn dry that the Chief Superintendent will have read the first few pages and gone, oh yeah, this is brilliant, and signed it off. That's how it's happening. That's how it's happening. So, what I would like you to do is when you see something dodgy going on, FOI, get me the documentation and send it to me. And then I can make a challenge, okay? You need to be using the FOI system more and more and more, okay? You can get a lot of information. Now, where is this coming from? Well, we've already said it's coming from Stonewall, it's coming from the likes of Mermaid, but it's worse than that. Within our police force, there is a secondary police force, and it's called the National LGBT Police Network. Every single force in our country have a local branch of the National LGBT Police Network. They all join together and form a coalition, a national council called the National LGBT Police Network, and there are 5 permanent, an executive committee of 5, and they come from, I think it's West Midlands, Merseyside, Northumbria, Police Service of Northern Ireland, and I think the West Midlands at the moment. Now, if that's bad enough that we've got a police service within a police service, but it gets worse because the National LGBT Police Network are formally affiliated with the Gay Police Network, the European Gay Police Association, it's called EGPA, based over in Europe. Now, in and of itself, there is nothing wrong with a bunch of LGBT police officers getting together with a bunch of LGBT comrades in Europe, if all they were trying to do was protect LGBT comrades from abuse and assault and all the rest of it. But they're not. If you look at the EGPA website, the EGPA website are formally affiliated with the European Union. Formally affiliated with the European Union. They're formally affiliated with an organisation called FLAG, another one called ILGA. And I'm going to read you some of the things which ILGA are seeking to achieve. Okay. The ideology that LGBTQ rights are human rights. That's one thing. To resist regional charters of family rights. Active promotion of the rainbow family. Promotion of LGBTQI awareness in schools. Get this. Prevent discourse that is critical of the LGBTIQ message. The criminalisation of conversion therapy. The closure of legal lacunas to protect gender identity within hate speech laws. In other words, get rid of the gaps in the hate speech laws. Legal protection for teaching gender ideology in schools. The adoption of minimum EU standards in relation to hate speech and gender identity. And the furtherance of hate speech laws in relation to gender identity. Now, for me, that all sounds very political. And it sounds political because it is political. There's no two ways about it at all. That is a political agenda. And our police force has within it a police force that has adopted this, which is promoting this, which is absolutely affiliated with Ursula von der Leyen, who says that any group that does not accept LGBTQI rights are not humanitarian. They are not human. Okay? So we have a police force within a police force which is actively promoting this.
Is that legal?
Pardon?
Is it legal?
No, it's absolutely illegal. It's completely illegal. Now, what's worse is this. Again, they hide in the open. The National LGBT Police Network tweeted a year or so ago, "We stand for Stonewall." Not we stand with, or we agree with a lot of what Stonewall states. We stand for Stonewall. They then tweeted at some gender-critical feminists, because they tweeted out how great it was that trans people were now going to be allowed to, trans women were now going to be allowed to compete against women in sport. And naturally speaking, a whole bunch of women said, this is terrible. And what they said was this: we see you, we have reported you. Now how sinister is that? We stand for Stonewall, we see you, we have reported you. And then what they did was this: they got wind of the fact that I was picking up on these tweets and their messages. So what they did was they blocked me. They blocked me, they blocked Fair Cop, they blocked the Bad Law Project, they're blocking feminist groups, etc., etc., etc. That, my friends, is a breach of Article 10 ECHR. Article 10 states that there has to be a free flow of information and knowledge between our government and pseudo-government departments and the public. So when they block you and I from seeing what they're saying, that is a clear breach of Article 10. So what we've done is we've written to all 5 of the chief constables whose members are running the National LGBT Police Network, and saying that we are going to take you to judicial review unless you unblock us. It's as simple as that. Their argument is that, well, we need to block you because you're a hate group. Our argument is, well, if we're a hate group, then what you need to do is challenge us, get us on a prescribed terrorist list, but short of that, fuck off and unblock us. It's as simple as that. It's as simple as that, yeah. If we're that terrible, if that, arrest us. If we're not, you have no right whatsoever to block us. Absolutely none. And we will absolutely see that threat through. I believe in the judicial system. Why? Because it's absolutely worked for me. Nick mentioned that I first came into this fight in 2019 because Humberside Police came knocking at my door over a retweet of a bloody limerick. And I said, I'm not having that. This is not right. This cannot be right. I beat the Chief Constable of Humberside, Mr. Justice Julian Knowles, likened the police to the Stasi, the Cheka and the Gestapo in one of the seminal free speech judgments back in 2019. I then took the College of Policing to the Court of Appeal, because in their wisdom, the High Court said that whilst Humberside were the Stasi, the Czech and the Gestapo for following the hate crime guidance itself was not illegal. We thought that was illogical, so we went back to the Court of Appeal, and we struck down that hate crime guidance, thank God. We're still now waiting for the College of Policing to reissue its legal hate crime guidance, and when they do eventually get round to that, we'll check, see whether it's okay, and if need be, we'll take them back to court. But some good news is this: that the police minister just this last year, the last few months, has said that if the College of Policing do not get their act together very, very soon and publish some decent guidance around hate crime and hate speech, then the government will make them do it in the upcoming police bill next year. So they're under threat. So what I'm saying is that being an activist, if you're smart, it works. If you're smart, if you can correctly identify the problem here is the conflation between guidance and law. It's identifying the source of the problem, which is Stonewall, mermaids, and way back from that, the national LGBT police network's dalliance with a European agenda. And then what we need to do is start attacking that. Now, people often describe me as a free speech advocate. I'm not. I'm not. I'm no more a free speech advocate than a soldier is a weapons advocate. What I am is a freedom advocate. And if they take away our speech, they've taken away our primary weapon of protecting our freedoms. And here's another thing. I do not want to pursue free speech. I don't want to pursue a Bill of Rights. I don't want to pursue a First Amendment like the Americans have got, because we already have it. As Englishmen and women, we already have freedom. We don't need to seek it. We don't need the government to give us freedom. We've already got it. What we need to do is defend our freedom. Not seek it, defend it. We don't want to follow a European model of permissions where the government give us the right to say what we want to say. We've already got that right. We've already got that right. And that's why I say I am not a free speech fighter. Speech to me is simply a weapon. I am a defender of the freedoms that we already have. Right, any questions?
If you put your hands up, we'll get the mic over to people. The microphone, you have to hold it basically through your lips to pick it up.
When you was arrested,
The mic, you've got to hold it literally through your lips.
when you was arrested, was it because of what you do or because of what you did or what you do?
When I was arrested because the police thought that they were making a legitimate arrest of Darren Brady. I knew that they weren't making a legitimate arrest, which is why I stood and said, to arrest him, you're going to have to go through me. So in their minds, I was committing the offence of obstructing a police officer in the legal execution of their duty. My argument was, and remains, that I'm perfectly free to obstruct a police officer when they are disobeying the law, and they were clearly disobeying the law, and that's what I said, and that's why I said you're going to have to go through me to get to him. What was interesting about that, of course, was, there's one of me, and they waited until there were 7 of them before they decided to actually carry through their threat of arrest. Can't imagine why, but there you go. By the way, that's all been dropped, and I'm now suing Hampshire Police for wrongful arrest, imprisonment, and threatening to pull my hair out. And I mean that quite literally, because when they came to me and said, we want a DNA sample, I said, fuck off, you're not having a DNA sample. And they said, well, you've got to. And I said, well, no, I don't have to. They said, well, you do, because 1, we'll not let you out until you've given us 1. And I said, and 2, if you don't agree to it, what we'll do is we'll pin you down and we'll pull your hair out. Like, okay, well, in that case, you can have some of them. So I'm suing him for threats of violence. There you go. And the reason I'm doing that is not because of the money. It's because they have no soul, the police. The only thing that works is when they have to justify a line in their budget. So there you go.
And they won't apologise.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, I've got a question.
Sorry. I found your story very interesting, and you used to be a police officer, right, as well?
A long time ago,
Yeah.
yeah. Back in the days when Inspector Morse was still like a police cadet. Yeah.
So it makes it more interesting, like your whole battle. And did I understand correctly that as a result of your battle, the non-crime hate incidents are now abolished, or that they are going to be abolished?
Yeah. Right, okay, so they haven't been abolished, but they are now very, very, very challengeable. So the second you turn around and say, via a subject access request, for instance, do I have a non-crime hate incident against my name? And they go, yes, you do. You just have to go now, Harry Miller. Remove it now, and they'll do so. They will do so. There's no two ways about it. The problem is, we estimate, well, in 2019, when I discovered these wretched things, they'd already clocked up 140,000 non-crime hate incidents against members of the general public. Toby Young and I reckon there's probably around about 220, 230,000 of them now. So the fact of the matter is, you don't know whether you've got one. And what is terrible about the non-crime hate incident is this. One, they've decided you're a non-criminal criminal, which is Orwellian and bizarre and terrible. Okay, so that itself is awful. Who wants to be on a police list of haters? I certainly don't. But secondly, the police argue and continue to argue that if you have a non-crime hate incident, it should be disclosable to your employer, so that if you are working with vulnerable groups, that's anything from university students to whatever, so that you can be disbarred from getting that job. Now, what we're hoping for is that, under threat of it being turned into legislation in the police crimes bill that's coming up next year, that the police are going to just get rid of the lot. Just get rid of all of them. And their argument is, well, there might be some great intelligence in there. And our argument is, that's not our problem. If you'd used non-crime hate incidents for the purpose that they were intended, then you'd have caught some criminals, you'd have stopped some crimes. But the fact is you haven't, because you can't tell the difference between somebody saying, oh, I feel hurt because they've said my cat's a Methodist, and a bunch of idiots talking in a private house talking about how they want to stab a black guy. They've not made any distinction. Now, I think, personally, that is an absolute stain on the police force and shows great disrespect to the memory of Stephen Lawrence and to the Macpherson report. Because what they should have done is use their noggins, use their brains, and taken proper non-crime hate incidents. In other words, speech which wasn't quite criminal, and it wasn't quite a conspiracy, but nevertheless it was very useful intelligence, and use that to laser target people who were clearly going to go on and commit a crime, and use that as police intelligence and stop it. That's what should have happened. But it hasn't happened because they've been so busy focusing on me saying, retweeting a limerick, saying my cat's a Methodist, saying I like Mary Poppins. That's the problem.
Yes, I mean, it's the fact that you've mentioned all that, right? And the last thing you said before we went to questions is, right, you're not going for anything to do with free speech legislation or anything like that, because we've already got it, right? You wouldn't be able to do all that if we already had it, right? So what I'm wondering is, could you pinpoint where it is either in legislation or common law where it says you have the right to free speech in this country?
Yeah, it's a fundamental common law right.
Where is it?
It doesn't. That's the thing about common law. That's the thing about common law. There is no statute against murder. Do you know that? There is no law against murder. None at all. It's common law. It's a common understanding that murder and theft are wrong. It's called common law. It's not statute. It's not by statute. Now, the problem here is this: that common law is based on common sense. Yeah? That we don't have to have 650 parliamentarians decide that murder is bad. You and I just know, because we operate on common standards of decency, that murder is a terrible thing, right? We don't need somebody to tell us that. Correct?
Yeah.
Correct. And in the same way in Britain, the state, the small state, recognises that there are certain rights that you have by being as Englishmen, basically. And free speech is one of them. Freedom of association is another one. Free thought is another one. Freedom of religion is another one. We don't need the government to give us permission. What we need to
No, in
do.
America, they've got a constitution.
That's because that's because the reason America is because America was born out of a revolution, and America did not have the thousands of years of history that we have in Britain. So what the Constitution attempted to do was to canonise what we already have here in Britain. That's why they have a First Amendment, whereas we have that amendment. We don't need an amendment. We've already got it. We've already got it. And this is important when it comes to fighting, because we are not pursuing freedom. We start from the position that we as Englishmen are already free. And what we need to do is defend our freedoms. We don't want to move to a position where the government grants us freedom, because that is perversely is giving them more power. And worse, it's adopting a European model. The European model is the state tells you what you can and cannot do. And that's why the police being so involved in the national LGBT police network and the European police network is so insidious, because the Europeans are working on the basis of the state grants you permission. In Britain, we don't need the state to grant us permission. We already have permission. The only limitations on our freedom are those limitations that government has set as a result of the democratic process. And that is it. It's an entirely different model. And if we're English, what we need is a police Brexit. We need a clear police Brexit where we pull out in total and we make it absolutely a matter of treason for a police force in the UK to have a group which is taking orders and instruction from the European Union.
So it's kind of like having a culture. That's the point.
I'm a great advocate of free speech. I live in Oldham. We've recently had the CSE review, and we were attending the Oldham Council CSE review in the middle of last year. And I sat quietly with my husband during the speech because Newsom and Ridgway had done the review. It's been on the telly, you've read about it. There was quite a commotion there. And people were handing up cards saying cover up and everything. And we were called racist, right wing, whatever. No free speech allowed. There's about 18 to 20 people who've been in that meeting. I'm not one of them. Were handed ASBOs and are no longer allowed to attend the Oldham Council meetings for the foreseeable future, for the simple reason of standing up and protecting the children that were abused, who they've done the cover-up. Now you can do, the police won't defend, it's a whitewash. And so now then people can not, and so when we go into a future council meeting, something as simple as you have to show your passport, photo ID, your name and address, and have your photograph taken every time you attend a simple council meeting in a Oldham Council chamber.
Yeah. Well, I think it's terrible. I think what we're moving to is where we get permission from the state, from the organs of state, from councils to be somewhere, to say something, etc. And it's entirely wrong. It's a European model, and we need to resist it. That's my view.
GB News has got a report on the...
I don't speak that about it.
Yeah. And they're not grooming gangs.
How do
Oh yeah.
How do we respect the police when they're literally the bully boy of the state? Like, they're literally allowing girls to be raped, groomed. They're then targeting people that speak out about many problems that exist. So for someone that's had police harassment for 4 years, how are we supposed to respect the police basically when all they're doing is targeting people on behalf of the establishment?
Right,
how are we supposed to respect them?
Right, so it's not all that they're doing. The vast majority of police officers, the vast majority, are dealing with domestics, violence, thefts, burglaries, missing persons, traffic offences, all the stuff that you would expect the police to be dealing with. The vast majority are doing that. So again, I remain very, very respectful of the average Bobby. The problem that we have is that our police force is being turned into an ideological, puritanical police force. Now, all of us know about what's happened today with bastard David Carrick, the multiple rapist, and then a couple of years ago, of course, it was Wayne Couzens, known as the rapist, with Sarah Everard, etc. But what I'm finding now is that the police are so obsessed with personal purity that I think that they're violating police officers' rights to freedom of speech. That they are going into private WhatsApp groups and seeing what's being said. Well, I don't think that's right. I don't think that's right at all. I think that's fundamentally wrong. And the reason for that is this: in this country, we have a police force where the police are the public and the public are the police. Again, it's very different from the European model where you have a gendarmerie, where you have armed agents of the state in uniform. We don't. Our police force, our Pelion police force, are you and you and you. They're the butcher, the baker and the candlestick maker who decide to put on a uniform and do full time what all of us are supposed to be doing by policing. That's what we do. You've heard this. You've heard talk about a citizen's arrest, right?
Yeah.
Well, here's the thing: police use citizen's arrest. When the police make an arrest, generally speaking, they are using a power which is available to all of us, not the other way around. When we make a citizen's arrest, we're not borrowing a power from the police. The police are using a power that is there for all of us on certain things. So if a crime is being commissioned, if a crime has been commissioned, and you know it's such and such, you can make an arrest. That's how store detectives do it. That's how security guards do it. Okay, but if we want a model where the police are the public and the public are the police, here's the thing. This is the rub. We're going to have to accept a less than pure police force. Because if the police force looks like us and we are not pure, then our police force has also got to be unpure. Because the alternative to that is a top-down ideological police force. Okay? So for me, having the odd policeman who makes a sexist joke, or having a policeman who tells an Irish joke, or has a policeman who behaves, on a WhatsApp group that's like, ooh, a bit dodgy. Well, does that represent what the public are like?
Yeah.
I think it does. So I think that we need to accept that we either have a impure police force who represent the public and are drawn from the public, or we go down the lines of a state-sponsored, puritanical police force that never tells a joke. But really, do we want that?
No.
Because to me, that's the Gestapo and the SS.